Now, in the past, I've done videos on what Lantern Corps the boys from the show The Boys should be in. And now I'm going to go over the 7, the bad guys from the show. Now, I will quickly explain what the Lantern Corps rings are. They're basically power rings that when you wear them, you get superpowers. And each ring is powered by a different emotion, and you have to have a strong emotional link to that emotion in order to wield the ring. And the Lantern Corps are love, hope, will, fear, life, death, avarice, compassion, rage, negative emotions, although it's pretty much considered to be shame, and the Gold Lantern Corps of joy and happiness. Now, I'm going to leave Translucent off this list. I'm not really going to count him as a member of the 7 since he died pretty early on in the show, and quite frankly we don't actually know anything about him. So instead, I will be using Stormfront as a member of the 7, as she's a much more interesting character anyway. And I'll only be using the show as source material. We won't be including the comics, and we'll only be counting the first 3 seasons of the show, as that's how many have been made at the making of this video. Homelander. Now, fear makes sense for Homelander, because he is the most powerful man on the planet and a violent psychopath. The problem is that most people don't know about this, as it's hidden from the public. And as of Season 3, they only sort of have a rumour about his violence, but most people don't believe it or are just unaware of it. In fact, a lot of people actually view him as a symbol of hope, though since this is a lie, he can never actually wear a ring of hope as the ring wouldn't accept him. Now, as the show goes on and the public inevitably become aware of his actions, well, then fear will make the most sense. So when the show is over, fear will most likely be the best Lantern Corps for him. But as of Season 3, the only Lantern Corps that make sense are either avarice or rage, as he does want everything, but the truth is he doesn't actually want most things he goes after. It's like the Vought Company. He thought he wanted it because it was being kept from him, but when he actually gets to be in charge of it, he realises that it's a lot of responsibility, and that he actually has no idea what he's doing. Basically, Homelander is a spoilt child who wants anything shiny that's dangled in front of him. He thinks he is perfect, and so everything he does will be perfect and will work out fine. And that he is capable of succeeding at everything. Which is ridiculous, as no one is capable of succeeding at everything they do. A lot of things, sure, but not everything. So avarice doesn't really make sense for him because it isn't really greed that's motivating him, it's just pettiness. Which is why the Rage Lantern Corps is right for him, because he is a child. And just like a child, he throws tantrums whenever things don't go his way. He acts impulsively and stupidly, lashing out in an instant when things go wrong, which is fairly often as he frequently bites off more than he can chew, and he doesn't really think things through either. And killing is his first choice, as he is just lashing out in anger, without thinking. So the Red Lantern Corps of Rage is really the only corps that makes sense for him, as rage is the only true emotion that he ever displays, other than jealousy really. The Deep. Now I did consider avarice for this guy as well, as he does want to be the top dog, a famous superhero, and have any woman, or other creature, that he wants. But really what I think motivates the Deep is his shame. He's clearly very ashamed of the person he is, which he should be. It's also why he lies and hides so much of himself, because he knows how bad and gross his life choices are. So I think the negative emotion rings, which are mainly shame, works perfectly for him. And I don't think much explanation is really needed for this, as anyone who's seen the show, and even idly looked at his character, can see that he is very ashamed of himself. And like I say, he should be. He's done some horrible things in this show. And even when he shares his inner desires and fantasies with people he cares about, everyone is just disgusted and embarrassed for him. He's even ashamed of the gills he has on his body. So I think this core matches perfectly, and he would definitely have a deep emotional connection with the ring. Maeve. Now, we don't really see a lot of Maeve's motivation, or rather, we only see one side of her motivation, and that seems to be the love of her girlfriend. Until then, she basically just did as she was told and indulged in substance abuse, and of course the occasional hookup. But when the girlfriend came back into her life, it all changed, and all of Maeve's decisions became about her, about keeping her safe, and eventually about spending their life together. She even gives up all of her superpowers and disappears with her. And giving up the power of a god is no small feat, And if that doesn't show that she cares, then nothing ever could. She also lost her powers, of course, by saving several people from being killed and depowered, which is also an act of love really, but the true connection comes from her working and sacrificing everything, from her pride to her powers, for the one that she loves. So the Star Sapphire Lantern Corps seems to be the right fit for her. And really, it's the only choice for her from what we've seen in the show. I mean, what other motivations and emotions does she really show other than being annoyed at the Homelander? Really, love is the only one that makes sense. Black Noir. Now, Black Noir was an up-and-coming hero in Vought. He was young, talented, and he was an inspiration to the black community as he was a hero in a much more racist time period. And he was acing it. So everything was going great. Until Vought ordered him to take down Soldier Boy. Now, he didn't really mind taking him down, as Soldier Boy bullied him constantly, along with the rest of his hero group, but in the process, Black Noir lost his ability to talk and half of his face, turning him into a mute with a hideous and terrifying deformity that he constantly covers with a mask. And because of this, he doesn't really display much emotion at all throughout the entirety of the show. We only see a little bit in flashbacks, and not really enough to base a Lantern Corps on. But of course there is one obvious choice, and that is the Red Lantern Corps of Rage, as the Red Lanterns are fueled by anger and their desire for revenge. And there are plenty of people he wants to get revenge on. Even when he leaves the Seven in Season 3, he still comes back to take care of Soldier Boy. Admittedly, this is partly because he knows he can't run, but it's clearly partly because he wants to get revenge on him. And let's be honest, if being stripped of his voice and having half of his face burnt off doesn't make him angry, well, actually there is no alternative. He is just angry. There's no way he couldn't be. Anyone would. So anger and revenge are the only things we know about him for sure. And add to this the fact that we only ever really see him do violence in the show, never really display any emotion or desires. Well, anger and revenge is all we know, so the Revenge Lantern Corps is the only one that he qualifies for. So it has to be them. Starlight. Now, this character is the only pure member of the group. Sure, some later members qualify as actually being a hero, but Starlight is the only member to last more than a season, and the only one from Season 1, that actually is a real hero. And as such, she is the only one to qualify for the Hope Lantern Corps. Now, at the beginning of the show, I would not have put her in this corps. In fact, the Love Lantern Corps would have probably made the most sense for her, or possibly Willpower. But given her deep relationship with Huey, love did seem to be her main motivator. But as the show goes on and she grows more confident, gains more influence in the media, and just plain wants to stop all the bad stuff that the Seven are doing and getting away with, well, she does become more of a beacon of hope to the public. And I think in future seasons this will only grow until she becomes the centre of everyone's hope in this world. But this video is only about seasons 1 to 3, and even still, I think by the end of the 3rd season she fully qualifies for the Hope Lantern Corps, as she is inspiring hundreds of millions of people worldwide. So the Blue Lantern Corps is my choice for her. Stormfront. When talking about a Nazi who has served during the Third Reich, who has superpowers and eternal youth, well, I can think of no other type of person better suited for the Lantern Corps of Fear. I mean seriously, who wouldn't be terrified of a raging racist Nazi who can shoot lightning from her hands? The concept is just truly terrifying for us all, especially considering that Nazis famously didn't like anyone who wasn't white, which is more than half the world's population, so she basically wants to murder half the world, or at the very least enslave them. I mean, how does that not scare everyone? And this joy she has for murder and death and the way it excites her does make her a contender for the Death Corps, as she clearly has been racistly killing people for around a century, so she must have a pretty high body count at this point. Especially taking into consideration the fact she wants to kill billions more, you could see her being in the Death Lantern Corps. But since she was never able to follow through on this goal, and it clearly is one of her goals, giving her ideals for conquest, I think that the Fear Lantern Corps makes sense, because she kind of failed in the Death endeavour. Now admittedly, when she's actually been crippled in Season 3, yeah, she kind of doesn't really qualify for any Lantern Corps, except maybe shame, because she is clearly very ashamed of the fact of what she's become, and that's why she inevitably takes her own life. But when she does have her body in Season 2, I do think that she should be a Fear Lantern Corps member. And really, that's the only time we can really count her, because she's not in Season 1, and she's not really in Season 3. So Season 2 is all we can really count as Stormfront's main time. And in that, she definitely qualifies for a Fear Lantern ring. ATRAIN. Now, ATRAIN doesn't really show much emotion, or even drives. There is some stuff with his brother and him wanting to reconnect with him, but he kind of screws that up anyway. And even helping his fellow black man get respect takes a back seat to him getting money. Because the only thing that seems to drive him is wealth. He sacrifices his pride frequently for cash, and he does what he's told purely because he doesn't want to get cut off from the gravy train. And even when he was off the team, all he did was work to get back on it purely to cash in. Even when he helped the boys, he only did it to help himself. So really, the only call that makes any sense for him is avarice, as that is the only time that he really shows any kind of emotional drive, when he's acquiring more money. Sure, there are a few moments where he gets discriminated against and that does make him angry, but it clearly isn't his main motivation, that's kind of just a side motivation. And he is far from the greediest person ever. But really, what other Lantern Corps can he be in? His only story is that he was born poor and got rich, and that he had a falling out from his brother because of the money and fame going to his head, and he even killed his own girlfriend, who he supposedly loved, so that he could stay an A-list superhero and keep the money flowing. So this really is the only option for him as of Season 3. Now maybe he'll show more of his character and new emotions as the show goes on, but for now all he has really shown us is greed, so that clearly places him in the Avarice Lantern Corps. And those are my choices of Lantern Corps for the 7 from Seasons 1 to 3 of The Boys. Do you agree with my choices? Or do you think that they belong in different Lantern Corps altogether? Be sure to let us know in the comments, along with your reasoning for why you think this. Just like my other Lantern Corps videos, this is very much a discussion video, and we would all love to hear your opinions. And I'd just like to quickly remind everyone that we have some merchandise available on our store, and to say thanks to all of you who have donated to the Needle Mouse Productions page on Patreon. And as always, thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.